guys, welcome back to the Confused Millennial podcast. My name is Rachel, your host and the blogger behind theconfusedmillennial.com. And this is a podcast all about helping you navigate this whole adulting thing. We cover everything from spirituality, shamanism, to everyday career stuff. And today, that's what we're going to hop into a little bit. I'm joined by Kallie Branciforte, who is most known for her YouTube channel, But First Coffee, where she has over 200,000 subscribers, and it's also a blog, butfirstcoffeeblog.com. She also works a full 9-to-5 job, has another brand, Caffeinate and Conquer, where she helps content creators, and she's 35 weeks pregnant. So she's got a lot going on in her life, which is why I wanted to have her come on the podcast, especially as we're transitioning into what I like to call the chaotic time of the year with back to school, work picking up, holidays, all of that fun stuff. And we're going to talk a little bit about, how she goes about prioritizing things, work-life balance, finding your purpose, all that fun stuff. So without further ado, let's hop into the conversation with Kallie. Welcome to the show, Kallie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm super excited too. So like I just said, you work a 9-to-5, you run But First Coffee, the blog and YouTube channel, and then you have Caffeinate and Conquer, which is all about teaching people how to blog, and you're pregnant, and like, as we're recording this, you're doing basically a month. So how do you do everything, and can I have whatever you're drinking?
I think probably the first thing to like understand is, I think anytime you see somebody online and you think like, wow, how is this person like doing everything and working 1,000 jobs and like traveling to Italy and like I couldn't even remember to pack my yogurt for work today, is that I think a lot of it is perception too. I mean, certainly like I do a lot. I'm not going to pretend like my weekends and my nights and my mornings aren't full. But I think like the first step is kind of understanding that some of it comes down to perception a little bit. It may look like somebody's doing like all of the things and you kind of start to feel a little like overwhelmed. Like, how are these people doing all of these things? And I can't do any of it. And some of it comes down to that. But for me, it really is, I prioritize my time really well. So it can be with all the things I do. I mean, I have a full-time job. I've got, a husband. I'm growing a baby. I'm working on my blog. I'm working on YouTube. When you have all of these sort of like pieces of your life, it can feel like you need to dedicate yourself like 100% to everything, and you need to be doing all of the things all of the time. So for me, it really comes down to like prioritizing my time, what things are worth certain amounts of time, if that sort of makes sense. But really a lot of it too is finding the stuff that I find the most worthwhile. So like I'm a big person about purpose. So, things that are purposeful to me and that give me meaning, that give me like a feeling of purpose. That's what's really important. So I try to dedicate my time to those things that give me that feeling of purpose. And then it's sort of like that cliche, you find something you love and you never work a day in your life. But if you do have something that's giving you meaning, it's giving you purpose, you kind of find time for it. It's easier to find time for it as opposed to something where it feels like a total chore. And then, you're like struggling to find the time to do it and you're putting it off and you're procrastinating.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. What's that called? Because people always look at me and they're like, how do you get so much done? I'm like, I literally feel like I watch TV like 8 hours a day still. So I'm like, right. I don't know. I just do it. And so a lot of me has thought since learning about like human design that it was just because like I was a manifesting generator. I'm super curious for those of you guys who aren't listening, definitely go back and listen to episode, I think 12 with Jen and Zoe on human design. Because that I think just revolutionizes the way that you work. Did you ever look up yours? I should have had you look yours up before this. I'm so curious what you are. Maybe we'll have you look it up after we finish this and I'll tell everyone in the outro because I'm very curious. So with like all that kind of said, I spent a year writing for Forbes about work-life balance. And I'm always really curious, do you believe work-life balance exists?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I think the first step to work-life balance is finding a job that fits the balance that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And I think work-life balance is different for everybody. Some people are totally comfortable giving 60 hours a week to their 9-to-5 and some people are not. I went to school for education. I was an elementary school teacher, and then I taught English as a second language for 3 years. And my next step would have been to go back to doing classroom teaching. I love to teach. I loved doing it. But if you know a teacher or you are a teacher, it's a very time consuming job. Like I got into the classroom at 6 a.m. I left at 5 p.m. and I worked like all of my weekends. So it became something where I kind of had to decide, like, I can do this and, I really love it and I enjoy it, but I'm not going to have time to do some other stuff that I want to do on the side. I just started blogging. And so I kind of had to make that decision to switch my career to find a job that would fit the work-life balance that I wanted. I wanted to be able to have a 9 to 5, but I also wanted to be able to do, the side hustles that we do. And I wanted to have time to have a life also as well, which is always a plus. And so when I started interviewing for jobs, a big part of what I looked at, obviously especially when you're in your early 20s, you're looking for benefits and you want to get paid more. But I was looking for a job that was close to home, that would give me, that I was going to work my 40 hours. I wasn't going to be working late nights. I wasn't going to be working weekends. And that was sort of how I prioritized looking for a job. So I think that's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah, I love that you said that too, that you actually look for a job based off of your values rather than what society says we need to have in order to be successful. Because I think that's the thing that so many of us forget. We all hear oh, you're interviewing the company too, and this is just as much your decision. But how many people are actually taking a step back and saying okay, what was lacking for me in my last job and how can I bring that more into my daily life? I wanted flexibility and freedom. That's why entrepreneurship, it just really works for me.
Right.
What is interesting for me too, because I want to go into the jobs that you started to take after teaching, because you had already launched But First Coffee, the blog.
Yeah.
And, you were really strategic, I think, about transitioning your skill set and really creating kind of transferable skills that built into this new realm that you were going in.
Yeah, I was very strategic. I was clearly at a place where, I had spent all of this time and all of this money to go to college to be a teacher. I had done it for a few years. And, so I definitely knew that I was taking this leap of faith, leaving education. But I had started blogging. I'd sort of been exposed to the world of basically internet marketing and sort of got totally hooked on the whole thing. And so some of it was definitely looking for a job where I would get to continue to learn how to do those things. But yeah, I was very strategic in looking for a job that would give me that. And I think that, like you said, there's sort of these societal pressures for your jobs. I think especially in our 20s when we're getting our first real career. And the job that I took it's not a fancy job. It's not a big company. It's not we don't work with all these really great clients, and I'm not working with Coca-Cola and, these big brands, but the company itself gave me the skills that I wanted, and I continue to get the skills I want. Like I said, it has the values that I want. It's close to home. It allows me to be super flexible. It allows me to sit down and have a podcast with you in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. It allows me to work from home when I need to sometimes. And it gives me that sort of flexibility. So I definitely went into it very strategically, and I went into it for me, not sort of what so often you're at parties and how often does the question, what do you do for a living come up? Mine is it's not that fancy, right? I work for an internet marketing firm. It's not super exciting, but it's the job that fits my lifestyle.
Yeah, but I also feel you're not giving it enough credit too, because you got to learn so much. Right. You're super knowledgeable, and then taking all of that stuff to go into your side hustles and everything. And so I like that you point out it's not about the big name brands and these deals that are flashy, if you will, because I think a lot of the times I have friends that work in marketing and PR and work with, the flashy names, if you will. And they're miserable. Flashy names come with a lot of red tape. And so there's so much to be said where just because it might seem like a humble thing to other people, it's really that's what pays you back dividends sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And the job itself, because it is a smaller company, I get to wear a lot of hats. Mm-hmm. And so I've gotten the chance to learn a ton of different things. I'm still learning all the time and getting to take on new things. And, we're sort of small, but we're growing. And so I get to be a part of that. And that's a huge part of learning for me.
Yeah. So, okay, you're also one of the few people I know, who doesn't want to, or hasn't up to, I know things might change because like you're having a baby and everything, but like up to this point, and it's been a few years where you haven't wanted to leave your 9 to 5 for your side hustle, even though you probably without a doubt could, because you're like really successful with your YouTube channel and everything.
Yeah, I think lots of times people go into sort of like our business, if you will, whether it's you're an influencer or you're a blogger, or you're a little bit of both, which, in general we're entrepreneurs or whatever. And it's sort of like you go into it and you're like, I'm going to do this for 1 year and then I'm going to quit my job and this is what I'm going to do full time. And certainly, I mean, I totally understand the want to do that. But like I said, there's a few pieces that fit into it for me. One of them is that the job that I have now currently, I'm still learning all of the time. I'm challenged. I enjoy the challenge of it. I'm one of those people that, once you stop learning, you might as well be dead, right? Mm-hmm. So I really enjoy that piece of what my job gives me. There's always the balance of, well, if I didn't have my 9 to 5, I would have more time to work on my own stuff, which is certainly a perk. Certainly it's something that, down the road, especially as a baby comes, maybe I'll think about. But it's never been like my main priority. I like to sort of balance my time and each thing that's sort of on my plate, like I said at the beginning, like they give me different feelings of purpose. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they're fulfilling me in different ways. So, but I mean, I'm very blessed that I've taken the time to find a job that does that for me. I think a lot of people are miserable in their jobs, mm-hmm. and then they're blogging and they say, well, I wish I could just give up this like awful corporate job or this awful job with this awful boss because blogging is so much better. So I guess, there's lots of answers to it. You certainly can hustle and do that and make your blog or your YouTube or whatever your full time, or maybe you decide that it's worth it to look for a job that's not going to be as miserable. Mm-hmm. And it can take a long time, I mean, it's not like you're just going to find it really quick, especially depending on like how the job market is. But I think if you go into it knowing what you want, it helps.
Right. And I think there's a lot too to be said, because I think too often people, I've seen over the last, I'd say year in the blogging community, people that had left their 9 to 5s to blog, quote unquote, full time, going back to 9 to 5s after a year because it wasn't what they imagined. It is like the life of an entrepreneur. My husband, and I were talking about this the other day, like, yeah, we post an Insta story that we're both sitting on the couch working together in the middle of the day on Tuesday. But like he's starting his new company. I am like trying to prepare for whatever a maternity would look like as an entrepreneur. Like, there's not stability. There's not security. Like that's stressful. So stressful. Like if you aren't cut out for it or you aren't prepared for it or you aren't used to generally living your life in limbo. And so I think there's sometimes where we over glamorize the other side of things. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
there's always like the grass is greener sort of thing too. But yeah, I mean, once you are a blogger, you're working or whatever you decide to do full time. I mean, yeah, it's like being a contractor, right? Like you're your own business. So you need to be out there, making yourself money and making sure that, you have money coming in every single week. And definitely part of the pro of a 9 to 5 is, like I have a paycheck at least that I know that's coming in every single month. Certainly I have the other revenue streams that I have coming in too. But, a big thing that I talk about on my blog is finances and sort of, being financially secure. And, in my late 20s into my now 30s, the last thing I wanted to do was like put myself in a bad financial place. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that I don't have any debt, that I'm saving up for retirement. So it's not worth that risk to me also. So, as glamorous and great as it sounds, like I still want to make sure that I'm setting myself up successfully financially as well too. So.
Yeah. And that goes a lot like retirement plans and setting those up and paying towards them. That's all on you when you are your own boss, and I think people forget about that a lot. And I think people forget how lonely it can be. Like, I think when you and I have talked about this in the past, like, it's nice to go into an office and like see coworkers and like get out of your sweatpants. Like, every time I see you, I always laugh because, real talk here, the reason I don't post more Insta stories is because I generally wear my pajamas all day. I wake up first thing in the morning, I brush my teeth, but I don't ever put on makeup. My hair, like, is always frizzy because I live in South Florida and I don't like style it. And every every time I look at Callie's Insta stories, which are always really entertaining, I'm like, her hair is not frizzy because she just did a deep conditioning treatment. She lives in Connecticut where it's not humid, and she always has like makeup. I'm like, that's the benefit of like going into an office. It's just people have to see you.
Yeah, and it is. It's just like the excuse. I mean, I work from home 2 or 3 days a week. That's part of like the perk of the job I have now. And definitely, I mean, working from home, there's obviously great pieces of it. There's parts of it that are awesome, but I do like that I'm forced to, like get out of the house, socialize with other people, like an excuse just like to leave the office and go get a coffee and, like put on clothes and, and I try to be really good when I work from home to like still get dressed because it makes me feel like I sort of am put together. But I feel like if I didn't ever go into an office, I would never get dressed. Yeah. Like I would just be in my pajamas all the time. I feel like it's because I'm kind of in the routine.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you also probably have clothes to get dressed at this point. I've been working from home for 4 years now where I like, honestly, all my work clothes are from like 5 years, 6 years ago. And I'm like, I have like 3 things I can wear to conferences. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't actually wish I was one of those people that could get up and get dressed. Because if I wanted to be one of those people, I would be one of those people. But it's always my excuse for not posting on Insta story. So I want to go back to something that you said earlier, which is about like being really good about prioritizing your time. So because like, I mean, you are very values based and things like that. How do you decide when it's time to reprioritize your time? Because I know you've kind of let like Caffeinate and Conquer die down a little bit. And also just like, what do you do to like, how do you decide where to put those efforts?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I like to kind of think about, I kind of feel like you can think about your time, like you can think about your budget, since like I talk about budget a lot. So you can certainly spend your time in a way that you're living paycheck to paycheck in a sense where you sort of just like, you've got just enough time to get you through the week to get the task that you were planning to get done that week done. But if something comes up, or something breaks down or, you have like a life occurrence, then you're sort of, out of money. You don't have anything put away. You don't have anything. So I like to think about it that way. And I feel like that kind of helps me prioritize my time a little bit. But I think a big part of it was probably like a year and a half ago, I kind of realized like I can't do all of the things. Mm-hmm. I can't do all of it. And especially when we're in this world of influencer space or blogging, there's so much that we're told we have to do. Yeah. You have to have a Facebook page and you have to engage and you need to post on it every day and you need to be on Instagram. You got to post on there every day and you got to post on Instagram stories. And now video is really important. So you've got to be on YouTube. If you're blogging, you got to post like 3 times a week and you got to make sure you're engaging there and you got to be marketing your blog post, right? It's got to go on Pinterest. It's got to go in a newsletter. And so it's all these things that you're told you have to do. And so for me, a big thing that I did about a year ago was sort of like step back and say, like, I can't do all of these things and do them really well, right? I can either do them all kind of like half-assed or I can choose the ones that are worth the time for me to really put my time in. And it's hard to make that step a little bit, because you want to do them all and you want to do them all really well because you know that it's important. But for me, I looked at what things were giving me the most value, the most feeling of purpose, what things were worth it for me the most, like financially, what things was I making money on, and then what things did my audience like the most. And then it kind of helped me prioritize it and say, like, I don't have time to do everything. And so for me, what gives me the most value and what gives me the most feeling of purpose is really content creation. So my blog and my YouTube channel is something that I really enjoy because I really enjoyed the process of creating content. And so it was worth it for me to spend more time investing in those 2 places and creating content and maybe like not posting on Instagram all the time. You know what I mean? Like, so what? I don't have 100,000 followers or 50,000 followers or 20,000 followers on Instagram. I have to dedicate my time to the things that, to sort of prioritize them that way. And I feel like that's actually when I started to really get into like a better groove with my time. And it's really what allowed me to I feel like overall be more successful, definitely be more successful, with my blog, with my YouTube channel. And some of it, you just kind of have to decide, what's really worth it at the end of the day. And so sure, somebody might land on my Instagram and, I'm not considered a huge Instagrammer, but I have this huge platform on YouTube that I use. And, that's what I've decided to invest my time in.
Yeah, because your YouTube channel is always it's interesting for me for a couple of reasons. Well, one, I always watch it. That's not what's interesting to me. But like, I used to even watch Callie's videos back like when she did like a ton of makeup and beauty stuff, and I don't even wear makeup. And I was like, she's just really entertaining. Like, I'm going to go watch this. But what's interesting is when did you start your YouTube channel?
It's I probably started it 4 years ago. I've probably been like really doing it for 3 years, I feel like.
And like, I feel like those first 4 years, whatever you want to call it, like that's how long it took you to get to your first like 100,000 followers. And I feel like your second 100,000 came in literally like a blink of an eye just in the past year. And I was like, oh wow, that just like exploded out of nowhere. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think so often we forget like, because we try to be on all the things and we try to do all of the things, it doesn't surprise me that a year and a half ago you decided to really get focused on where you're prioritizing your time. And then all of a sudden, like what took you 3 years to do, you're doing in like a year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does. It comes down to, like I said, you can either do all of the things, 25% of the way, or you can pick, the few things that are worth it and do them, give them 100%. The quote that they say, like, do less with more focus.
Yeah, totally true. For you, okay, so with YouTube, like there's a big trend right now where everyone's doing like day in the life content, and everyone's kind of like, I was just watching like a video by Aspen Ovar, and she's like pretty much like, I don't know what to produce for you guys really anymore because everything's a day in the life. And I started off as like a life hacks thing, and I just feel confused. And you've still stayed really successful doing like life hacks and DIY and like all of that type of content. Why do you think that is for you?
Yeah, YouTube is like a very funny YouTube's different than like any other platform, right? It's like very different because there's definitely like the trending stuff, like what's trending and like what's new and what's happening. But unlike some other platforms, things don't like necessarily always die right away on YouTube. There's like a huge, evergreen and SEO benefit to YouTube as well. So I think it's really common, especially on YouTube, to get caught up in trying to follow like what's the trending thing. Yeah, like what is like the new type of video that everybody's doing, these like 24-hour challenges, the day in the life. And to really get caught up in that. And when I was at like the 2-year mark on YouTube, that's like totally when I got caught up in that. And I was thinking about like, well, I had this one video and it got a lot of views, and how can I capitalize on that and keep doing the things that are going to, be quote unquote viral. And I sort of like lost interest in it for a little bit because I wasn't creating content that like I cared about. It's creating content that I thought was going to be trending or was going to be popular, that I thought people wanted to see, and not creating content that I wanted to, or that really like aligned with myself. So for a while, like I almost gave up YouTube. I sort of thought about quitting it. And it was right around that time that I was nominated for YouTube Next Up, and I was able to spend a week in New York City with YouTube and sort of just get like reinvigorated in the whole idea of like the content creation, sort of going back to that thing that I really enjoy, which is the process of creating content. And I took like a month and a half off from YouTube, and I sort of came back and I said, like, I'm going to create content that like I enjoy creating, stuff that like I want to share, stuff that I think is valuable, it's enjoyable. And I've tried to really just sort of stay true to that. I mean, certainly with all of the content we create, we think about our audience, we think about what they want to see. But at the end of the day, I feel like if you're sort of staying true to yourself and this type of stuff that you really enjoy creating, it's going to be a much more enjoyable experience for people to watch. So that's sort of how I've done it. It's really hard to not get caught up in YouTube alone, but in any of these worlds, what's trending and what's super popular and what everybody's doing. But I also feel like there's been a shift in the last year on social media in general, of just like people wanting to see more like of the real life.
Yeah. No, I feel like I love that you kind of touched on the passion of everything, because even I've talked to so many bloggers over the years that are like, oh, I did a post on this topic and it was supposed to do really well, but it ended up not doing really well. And it's like, well, why did you think it was supposed to do really well? And they're like, because those pins are always viral on Pinterest. And I'm like, So if you try to water down other people's content, you're never going to be successful. Like the entire point of being a content creator is having a unique point of view and showcasing what you can bring to the table. Yeah. Like that, I think gets lost sight of so often. And those are usually the bloggers that within the next 6 months, they've always ended up quitting. And so whether like you are a content creator or you're in your 9 to 5, I think that same kind of principle applies. If you're trying to keep up with somebody else's race, it's only a matter of time until you get burnt out and you can't keep up with it.
Yeah.
It's, I think that we forget to how much when we're passionate about something, we become like really sparkly and get people really excited about what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, you had talked earlier too about purpose. And so for you, where did you start? What is your purpose or one of your purposes? Because I think we have more than one. And where did you find yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, you know, especially at the beginning of creating content, you know, you're supposed to sort of, you know, people are telling you you're supposed to like niche down or you're supposed to have this like theme or whatever. And it's not always necessarily just like something that shows up. I mean, I started blogging in YouTube like totally on accident. I just really wanted to create stuff. I didn't like go into it with some type of purpose. So it wasn't until I started to sort of grow and I realized that, you know, I was doing something with this that I was like, you know, realizing that I needed to have a purpose, not necessarily for my audience, but for myself, so that I kind of knew where to go with my content a little bit. And so I kind of had this like, you know, feeling of what I was doing. And it didn't just like come to me. I feel like it took a while. It took a lot of, you know, creating content that failed or, you know, chasing something that I found out like didn't fulfill me. So it definitely took a lot of trial and error. And I think that, you know, it took a lot of trying stuff that totally failed and not being afraid to try something at the risk that it might fail. Trying something that was different, that wasn't maybe popular or trending or like what everyone else was talking about or sharing, to find that people actually really related with it and they really wanted to like hear more about that type of stuff. So some of it was taking risks and like not being afraid that, you know, it might totally dud and some things totally did dud and they were total failures. And so some of it was being willing to just like try a lot of different things to give myself the chance to sort of find what felt right, I guess. It can be really easy to fall into sort of like what you were saying before, you know, trying to follow somebody else's path of success. Like this is what they did and this seemed to work. But for me, because it's always been about really trying to find that purpose at the end of the day, I've been willing to just try stuff that's not necessarily popular, or that, you know, I don't always think is going to necessarily do well. I mean, you know, some of my most popular videos, probably if you looked at like my 5 most popular videos on YouTube, they're videos that like, I didn't go into them thinking that they were going to be popular. I wasn't like chasing what was the trending thing at the time. It was because like, it was something I thought was interesting. And I kind of like went after that. So, I mean, kind of how I feel now is, you know, a big thing that I like to sort of share and a lot of what like my blog and my YouTube is about is just, I guess sort of like it kind of ties in that same idea that it's, you don't necessarily need to be doing what you think everyone else is doing. Sort of like the idea of, you know, life can be a little bit simpler. It can be a little bit easy. You don't need to be, you know, really flashy or spending a lot of money to sort of enjoy life, which I think a lot of us start to kind of feel like when we see, you know, on social media, we see all these people like doing all of these things all the time and we can feel like overwhelmed, like we're not doing anything compared to anybody else.
Yes. I mean, I can't even tell you right now because earlier this year, I went and unfollowed like almost everybody basically on Instagram. I unfollowed like, I think over 1,000 people. Yeah. What's it called? It was honestly one of the best experiences of my life. I highly recommend everybody goes and do it. And I had realized like I had followed all these random brands over the years, whether I was like entering giveaways or, you know, maybe I was like trying to pitch a bunch of people. So I followed a bunch.
Yep.
And, it's funny because like now being pregnant and I'm going and like looking obviously for brands to partner with, or like I'll see like a really cute outfit or really cute clothing line. And I honestly, I'm like at this point again where I'm like, I want to follow all of these brands so I don't lose them because it's almost like a Rolodex at this point.
Yeah.
But holy heck, I can't live my life like constantly just looking at all of the things, whether it's like you're trying to keep up with somebody else that's like traveling all around the world, or you're just trying to keep up with like the product influx and the consumerism of it all. It's overwhelming. Like it's so overwhelming. I can't even. So that's just my kind of like tangent on it all. Go ahead and unfollow I don't even know where I was going with that. I just really needed to like get that off my chest of like, maybe it's time for me to unfollow more people.
No, I know what you mean. I have like a total on Twitter and on Instagram. Like if I'm scrolling through my feed and like anything comes up that like just doesn't jive with, I'm like, okay, bye. You know, just like I unfollow them because it's not worth it. Yeah. And when I see brands or I see something I want to remember, I just take a screenshot of it because I'm like you, like I don't want to have to follow them and then it show up in my feed all the time. So like I have little folders on my phone of like different screenshots, like brands to check out later, like things for after baby comes or like whatever. So I'm not following the brand and like getting inundated. But I have my little Rolodex.
I was doing the screenshot thing for a while, but digital clutter is one of my biggest pet peeves. And I literally spend hours just deleting photos, I delete everything. Like I don't keep really anything on my computer. Everything goes into like my Google Drive storage because I cannot handle if I have like more than 50 documents on my computer at a time. It stresses me out. I was doing my first YouTube videos and I was like messaging Kallie because I was just having a lot of issues along the way, but I had added in like all these little like YouTube-y emoji pop-ups and my dumb ass goes and starts deleting them because I can't handle having 50 documents on my computer at once. And all of a sudden it's like a big like file not found in the video editing software. I was like, okay, Rachel, just gonna have to take deep breaths, pretend the clutter is not there. I like the
clutter when you make videos.
That was definitely I got down to like 1 gigabyte of memory left on my computer during that time. It was a very stressful time. I'm happy I got through that learning curve. Which let's actually talk about that learning curve because people, whether you are a content creator, or you're just kind of like or trying to become a new mom and all this type of stuff, like we're all going through these like really intense learning curves. I feel like, especially at these different stages in our lives, in our 20s and our early 30s, or just in our 30s in general, because Eric's 35. I thought he was 36 for a sec. He's 35. So it like tips for just kind of like making that simple because it's a lot. Like, how are you handling all of the transitions and all that fun stuff? Yeah,
I think it sort of goes back a little bit to sort of what I said at the beginning, where it's, you know, like you can look at people and think that, you know, I think we live in a world where we're like inundated with people and brands and stuff like all the time and pretty pictures. And it can feel like everybody, all the other people around you kind of have like all their shit together. And you're like, how come I don't? Like, how come all of these people are like got everything together and it's so great and I can't seem to get it together? So I think some of it is under like giving yourself the understanding that that's not true and really understanding. I mean, we hear it all the time. We're like, Instagram is just a highlight reel, but like you need to really understand it because if you spend a lot of time on social media, it doesn't matter how many times you remind yourself of that, you're still going to get down on yourself about it. So it doesn't matter like how put together it looks like somebody has it. We're all kind of a mess a little bit. We all just like hide it better in different ways. But I think it's really just about, I personally, like, I love the process of learning. I think that, and this would be like a totally different tangent that we don't need to go down, but I think that the education system like fails a lot of people and makes us hate to learn. And so you end up with a bunch of people in their 20s who like think they hate to learn. Mm-hmm. I love to learn. So I kind of embrace it that way. I think it's okay to not know the answers to everything and to go through the process of learning it and to, you know, to, like I said before, like make the failures and, you know, take the risks and go through that process of learning. But just to also give yourself, you know, grace because like we can't all do it all. And we're all learning things as we go. And you're going to like mess up and you're going to fail and then you're going to get down on yourself. And then you're going to get back up and you'll be fine again, sort of at the end. So I don't know, that was like 18 different answers in one question.
No, I get it. Because I feel like a lot of the times too, I always say like, for me, like, I don't believe in failure. I think it's all just like stepping stones in our evolution and our growth. I also love learning. I feel like it's funny because Eric he hated learning, I think, until before we got together. Because you're right, like the education system didn't like quote unquote fail him in the sense like he obviously made it through. He was like an average student, all that type of stuff. But like it failed him in the sense that it like really pounded out his desire to learn, and like the idea that like you have to be fitting a certain type of mold in order to be an achiever in this. And if you're an achiever in this, then you can take enjoyment of it. Like that whole idea of things, I just feel like is so outdated and totally needs to go. And now I watch him like teach himself things for his company, and teaching himself like how to write 40-page white papers and all of this crazy stuff. And like it ties back into everything that you've kind of been talking about with like when you have your purpose, when you have your passion, like it all just ends up, that is work-life balance. Like I that year that I was interviewing like top CEOs of major corporations and stuff, and they're like, you can't have work-life balance. And I'm like, I feel like that's just such an old way. You won't have it if that's what you believe. Like it comes down to not how you're dividing your time equally. It's not like that. It's how you're balancing your passions and how you're filling up your tank throughout the day. Because too often I think we lose sight of that like maybe when our babies get here, we're going to spend 24/7 for 6 months on them, but that is going to feel like work-life balance for us because that's how it feels. Or maybe we're going to spend like part of the time with them, part of the time at 9 to 5, part of the time working on content creation, because that's what feels like balance for us. It doesn't necessarily mean 50-50. Like, I think that's such an old way of looking at things.
Yeah, absolutely. And and like you said, it's your own formula is going to change, like as your life changes, and your formula is going to be different than other people's formulas. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of what we've sort of been talking about in like today's talk is like just coming back to like at the end of the day, it's like it's really focused on you, right? Like we have a lot of outside influence, and we can be influenced by watching other people and seeing other people, whether it's in social media or whether it's just like people in your own community, your friends and whatever, and thinking we have to do it like other people do it. But you're going to have your own formula for whatever that work-life balance is. And, people won't always get it or understand it or like relate to it or whatever. But if it works for you, then that's the one.
Yeah. And I think, kind of with that topic of like finding what works for you, it was so interesting for me. And, I kind of knew what I was doing when I did this. Let me preface that. I'm not upset about the story I'm about to tell. It's just like, I think paints a good picture. So you do this a lot too, because I honestly do feel like you and I are probably, if there's another content creator that's most similar to me, it is probably you. Like I always think that, especially like as you've been writing these like longer form posts lately, I'm like, honestly, like there's no other content creator out there that I think is so similar to me, in both just how you prioritize your time, like how everything has evolved for you and all that good stuff. So anyway, so when you got pregnant, and you would like pose questions to your audience, like what were your must-haves for your newborn and stuff like that. And, everyone would like drop their stuff there. And so, I had like legitimate questions, and I was like asking people like, did they have a night nurse, and like, what was that like? And like, was it worth it? Was it not worth it? Cause every baby sleeps so differently. And it's just like, I was curious. The amount of people that either left like rude comments, passive aggressive comments, and then I started getting text messages where people were like, you definitely need to have one, da 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 da. Like, I'm like, okay, everyone, slow your rolls. I'm just trying to like gather information. So instead of saying like, do this or don't do this, like I just want to hear about your experiences and your decision making process here. So kind of with all of that said, my question for you is A, how do you kind of like build up a thick skin, and B, how do you decipher what your path is when people are like not really answering your questions?
Yeah, I think part of it is I've always been really good at just like letting stuff kind of like roll off my back. Yeah. And I feel like especially on YouTube, because I have a great community on YouTube, and like I have awesome subscribers and like people that, I see on every video, and they're great, but like I always joke that like some of the stupidest people on the earth must be on YouTube too, because the comments that you get that people leave, you know, just like they don't make any sense, and they're literally just hateful and like vulgar and mean and rude. And so you have to develop a little bit of a thick skin for that. But I've always been really good at letting that roll off my back. And I feel like I do the same thing with advice as well. I mean, I'm sure, you know, like you literally never get more advice in your life than when you were pregnant, or maybe when we have a new baby, then we get even more like just like unsolicited advice that like I sometimes didn't even ask for. But I had a really good sort of tip that I guess like I've always used, like it just like naturally came to me. But I was in one of our baby classes and the teacher said it, and I was like, that's sort of like a good way to say it. And she's like, when people give you advice, because they're going to give you like advice all the time, she's like, just say like, thank you for that advice. Like, great, thank you. She's like, and then you take it and decide what you want to do with it, right? You like put it in your mind, and then you decide like, one, that's like freaking insane, I'm never going to do that. 2, maybe that'll work and I'll try it. Or 3, like that's totally genius, I'm definitely going to use it. So I think some of it's that too, you know, when people are like constantly giving you advice, especially unsolicited advice, or just like, you know, stuff that like, you're like, that's not really what I was asking, but that's fine for you to write a novel telling me why you think that about that. It's just to, you know, okay, thanks. And then, you know, if it's annoying, just like let it go, right? Yeah. It's stuff that's helpful, just like weed it out that way, because yeah, you're going to get like I mean, I get a ton of stuff for baby stuff, but I get stuff for just, I mean, I posted something on my Instagram stories the other day about this like wasp problem that we have in our house. These wasps up. I can't tell you how many comments I got or DMs I got, like different advice on how to get rid of wasps and how to get rid of bees, but to be careful because some bees are protected by the government and you can't kill all the, like so much more information than I ever wanted to know about like bees and wasps, right? So I just had to thanks so much, but take the stuff that was useful and what was helpful.
Yeah, no, I wasn't called. That's what I always try to do. I always kind of like laugh because, I just want to know what people's experiences are instead of like, do it, don't do it. And I'm like, yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. And so it's definitely an interesting experience because like, no, I knew going into it that there was a potential to like have this, door open for mom shaming already. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just start like building up a thicker skin now. I'm like fully okay. That's why I prefaced this whole story. Like, I'm really okay. Like nobody like needs to worry about me or censor themselves with the comments they're leaving. It's really okay. But I was definitely surprised because honestly, actually, it wasn't even, you know, necessarily the people that were just followers or just podcast listeners and things like that. It was actually people that like I knew in like the flesh, if you will. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're doing this right now. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And it's crazy that people don't, I feel like, especially like in the pregnancy world that, I mean, like, I feel like we all know, my pregnancy has not been like any other pregnancy of any of my other friends, right? So different. And I know my labor will be different than every other labor that I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of stories, and my baby's not going to be like any other baby. And it's weird that the other women who have gone through the same thing, like you think that they would sort of like get that. Like they're like, well, my baby was so different than everyone else's baby. Maybe this will work for you. I don't know. You know, but people just like get so like, you got to do it this way or you have to do it this way. And it's just sort of weird that you think, I kind of feel like, aren't we all like part of a club now where we just like, whatever works for you, you know, that's what you should do.
Yeah. I always kind of try to, I mean, as far as like content creator, I feel like it's kind of, this is how I try to rationalize it, like make sense of it all in my head, if you will, because, you know, I talk very matter of fact in life and just in general, like I speak very matter of fact. And whenever I'm like editing my content, I'm always like having to go back and add in like qualifiers and disclaimers. Like obviously everybody's different. Like I'm like these things that I feel like should just be like really obvious and like we should like internally just kind of know. Yes. And so whenever somebody comes in like super hot with that matter of factness, I'm like, okay, this is just something about myself that like I need to like heal and love a little bit more. It's not about me. Like obviously everything's going to be different. And you have to figure out what works best for you and let them have their soapbox for that minute. Yeah. Because otherwise I feel like, you know, I think everyone is truly like at the core of it well-intentioned and like really meaning super well. It's such an interesting world we live in though, where like you have 100 or 280 characters on Twitter and like limited characters on Instagram, where you're like trying to get your point across and you're like, this is not working very well right now. So that's my tangent of just like give everyone the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, most people are there. I mean, they're trying to be helpful. Like everyone was like, I didn't ask people about my bee problem, but like people were like legitimately trying to help me, like not mad that people were there and they were trying to like give me advice. But you can become overwhelmed with too much advice sometimes.
Exactly. I think that's the big thing, which is just like, I've deleted Instagram off my phone for many a times before because I just can't keep up with it all. And it's just I unsubscribe from emails. I'm basically, like I said, digital clutter is my worst nightmare, and I'm just constantly getting rid of things in my life. Well, one of the other questions I want to ask you, because it's the question I get asked most often, so I feel like I know what I tell people, but I'm curious to hear what you tell people. What do you say when somebody says they want to start a YouTube channel or a blog to make money?
Don't do it.
That's like, what I tell people.
Don't do it. Don't do it to make money. I mean, it'd be like, I don't know. I mean, it's such like we've sort of said, it's such like a passion and purpose based thing that like, if your purpose is to make money, I always sort of say like, you're literally going to maybe invest some money, invest a bunch of time, get frustrated and give up.
Yeah.
I think probably the most, successful people that went into any of these fields, like they didn't start wanting to make money. And even though I make money now, it's still not like my main goal. And, that's part of the balance that I've decided for in my life, that I've kept my 9 to 5 so that I don't have to rely on my YouTube channel necessarily to make me my monthly income. If I want to turn down a bunch of brand deals, or I want to create a couple of videos that maybe aren't going to be viral because I want to test them out and aren't going to make me as much money, I have that freedom to do it. So I think that's probably part of, what's held me back from totally giving up my 9 to 5 is that, then my passion would then be, my main career. And so I sort of worry that I would like lose pieces of the creativity I have with it, which, I probably wouldn't. And I'm sure
I don't think you would.
A lot of people who do it better than I do, but it's sort of like one of the things that I sort of give myself. So,
yeah.
No, I mean, I would never go into it for money.
Yeah, I don't think you would. Cause like, I turned down so much stuff. It's unbelievable. Like, I know I could, make a lot more money if I took everything that came my way. But at the end of the day, it's about me maintaining the passion. Like, I started my own business to have flexibility and freedom and to just kind of chase those passions and wherever those led me. And so why am I ever going to compromise on that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, why would you jeopardize everything you worked on to just chase money? I always tell people the same thing. I'm always like, there's much easier ways to make money. So probably don't do this because you're going to end up driving yourself crazy. So with all of that said, where can everyone find you?
I guess the best place to find me is just on my blog. So, butfirstcoffeeblog.com. That's going to be the hub for all of the things. The links out to all of the other things from there is the best place to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Definitely go ahead and check out butfirstcoffeeblog.com.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, as always, make sure to screenshot it, share it on your Instagram, tag me at The Confused Millennial. Go ahead and tag Kallie at Kallie_Branciforte, and I'll leave links to both of those in the show notes in case you need any help. So that way we can see it, we can say hi to you, and we can just maybe reshare it on our own stories. And as always, have a great rest of your week. And next week, we're going to be coming back with something very exciting. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoy the podcast, leave 5 stars because it's super appreciated. All right. Thank you guys so much.